So I have a question. Do you guys not associate dark skin with South Africa? And I'm asking this because as someone who grew up in a city as a dark skinned person, I got asked a lot when I was growing up. Even now, sometimes I get it. But I got asked a lot whether I was Congolese, right? Congolese was the main one. And then sometimes I'd get like, I got Kenya. I've gotten Ghana a few times. Not a lot. It's not very common. But I've gotten it a few times. And just a few other random African countries, right? Everything but South Africa. And I remember when I was younger, it was such a strange experience because I used to have one of my best friends was Congolese and she was lighter skinned than me. And she used to have the opposite problem, which was that people used to always greet her in Vernac, right? So sometimes strangers would find us together and they'd greet her in Zulu and they'd turn to me and greet me in English. And I was always like, okay, in order for people to talk to me in Vernac, I had to say something to them in Vernac. Then they'd be like, oh, and I suppose that's my question. Do you guys not associate dark skin with South Africa and it being a South African feature? Because there were other friends outside of my best friend. There were other friends as well that I'd sometimes be with, like friends of friends that were in South African, but they were yellow bones. And we'd have the same experience. People would speak to them in Vernac and they'd have to correct that. And they'd turn to me and speak to me in English. And I'd have to respond in Vernac to make sure that you can talk, And I'm asking this because I remember also a few months ago, there's a lady who posted her two dark-skinned daughters here. And she wrote that, oh, my South African daughters, blah, blah, blah. And the comments were crazy. People were talking about how there's no South African person who looks like this. Those kids are, like, they were literally calling those kids xenophobic slurs. And I was looking at those kids and nothing about them said they were not South African. Like, I was looking at them and it was just like, okay, like, I couldn't see what the outrage was about, but people were really angry. And it was like, I was just thinking, like, do you guys think that there are no dark-skinned South Africans? Okay, I know you know this, but another thing that I've noticed is that the dark-skinned people that you guys are willing to accept, they have to be extremely beautiful. They have to be perfect in order for you to acknowledge that they are. So yeah, like, Yini, what is it?
Yes, I am South African, and no, not all South Africans are light-skinned. I was just saying that there's definitely privilege and preference, more preference surrounding light-skinned people as opposed to dark-skinned people in South Africa or in society.
Black men really like to call self-hate preference, because what do you mean you only want to date light-skinned women because you don't want children that are as dark as you? Preference is preferring oranges over bananas. It's not preferring other people's skin tones over yours, other people's races over yours. So we can't have preference. Yes, you can. Prefer yourself first before you prefer other people, before you prefer other races, before you prefer other skin tones. Why can't you see that there's something very wrong with never wanting people who look like you to ever exist again, to the point that you're determined to make sure that you are the last person to look like you? Truly embarrassing.
South African rappers love dark-skinned women, but only on camera. Let's talk about it. I've noticed that our big rappers, particularly hip-hop rappers, all have one thing in common when it comes to their wives, girlfriends, baby mamas. They're all fair-skinned, light-skinned, mixed, biracial, which is fine. Like, date who you want. Nobody's policing love. But when you go watch their music videos, it's mostly dark-skinned women who they're using to represent the culture. And it's confusing because why is that? Why are black dark-skinned women good enough to represent the culture but not good enough to represent your real life? It's like dark-skinned women become branding, an aesthetic, a symbol of I'm real, I'm from the hood, I'm connected to my roots, I represent the culture. But when it's time for serious relationships, the preference always changes. And no, I'm not saying every rapper. It's a pattern, and if you see it, you see it. And this stuff matters way more than you think, because little girls are watching. They're seeing who gets chosen publicly and who gets chosen privately. That messes with people's self-esteem. So I just want to know, why are dark-skinned women the face of culture and light-skinned women are the face of commitment?
The funny thing about some Zulu women saying wise man chose love over beauty is that majority of Zulu people are dark-skinned. I keep saying this. Majority of us South Africans are dark-skinned. Just because we're not as dark as people next to the equator, it does not mean that majority of the population is not dark-skinned. We have such an obsession with the representation for South African women being a light-skinned woman. That's also why we're seeing such a rise in bleaching in South Africa. We've normalized colorism so much, and it just continues to get worse. Bleaching used to be something that was looked down upon in our society, but now it's so normal to come online and be like, oh, this is the product I'm using to become 10 shades lighter. We've created a beauty standard that majority of us do not even meet in the first place. Majority of us are not light-skinned. Majority of our parents, grandparents are not light-skinned. And once you've decided that a group of people are just undesirable, you can call them whatever slur you want. That's why the word Shangan is used in such a derogatory way in many Zulu families. Like, hey, Leli Shangani. And people have brought that thing online as if it's funny. And it's not funny, because you know what you mean by calling someone Ishangani. It's not a term of endearment. And you also know that it's not Shangan in South Africa, it's Tsonga. They've been correcting you for the longest time. But you guys want to use the word Shangan in a derogatory way too. Another reason some of these women are just mad, it's because they don't view Wise Man's Wife as being worthy. Because she doesn't fit the mold, the beauty standard, she is not worthy of good things. Because she's dark-skinned, because she's Tsonga, because she's not wearing a lace front bust down, all of a sudden she's not worthy of all the good things that you deem yourself worthy of because you're lighter than her. It's embarrassing, really.
Today I want to speak about the demonization of dark skin and how dark skin has almost become an exclusively masculine trait, how dark skin has usually been linked to masculinity, and how dark skin is actually exploited by the very same society that hates it. And what it showed me is that society demonizes dark skin, spits on dark skin, until it's time for them to capitalize and profit off of it. Modeling agencies often love taking people with much darker skin tones because it's seen as being exotic. You know what I mean? For their fashion campaigns, their modeling campaigns, or whatever it is. So essentially, like I said, society ends up profiting off of the very same dark skin that they demonize. I also want to speak about how the over-masculinization of dark skin has led to this bleaching culture, this skin bleaching culture that we particularly see affect a lot of women. You know, a lot of women end up bleaching their skin to become lighter because they see being dark as being not only masculine, but like I said, unattractive. And I find something so wrong. I find something so sad about that. I find something so sad about that. To me, that is really sad. And so the bleaching industry almost relies on this self-hate that a lot of black people have, whether it be black women or even black men. You know, these bleaching industries, they rely on this self-hate that a lot of black people have because from the moment they're born, they're told that their dark skin is a curse, that it makes them unattractive. And I think it's bullshit. You know, I think dark skin is absolutely beautiful. And so the over-masculinization of dark skin has led a lot of women to thinking that the darker they are, not only the more unattractive they are, but the more masculine they are. And so to become more feminine, I must have lighter skin tone. I must have a lighter skin tone. You know what I'm saying? See, I hate hearing these stories of dark-skinned peoples telling me that they experience abuse even from their own family members, some of them even from their own mothers. And I want to end this off by using a very popular quote or song lyric, rather. Very popular song lyrics by the late great Tupac Shakur on Keep Your Head Up when he says, they say the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice.
You know, the reason that our parents held on to colorism, and the reason that I think in many ways, whether we do it subconsciously or consciously, we hold on to colorism is because colorism directly affects our livelihood. it affected the livelihood of our parents in more extreme ways. But I think in many sort of, smaller nyana ways, it also affects us. And I say that because, before my mom left the country, she left the country at a very young age. But before she left the country, she became a nurse. And the reason that she went into nursing is because after high school, she did not have any money to go to university. And even if there was money in the family to go to university, it would first be allocated to the boys and then the elderly children, right? Unfortunately, our parents had to deal with racial injustice as well as, all the injustices that patriarchy comes with, right? So she was unable to go to school, and none of them were able to go to school in her family because there was just no money. And so she went into nursing. And she said, when she got there with her matric certificate, she didn't even really know how to speak English or Afrikaans. All she knew was isiXhosa at the time. But when she got there with her matric certificate, it wasn't her credentials, the fact that she had passed so well, that got her the job. It wasn't the fact that perhaps she had some sort of nursing experience. And she said that because some of the women that were there with her at the interview had credentials, right? But that was not the reason that she actually got the job. The reason that she got the job was because when she was in the interview room, the matron, who was a white Afrikaner woman, was there with her husband. And the matron's husband said to the matron, "Shoo, say us a mooi K." And the matron agreed with her husband that this one, referring to my mother, was a mooi K. So she got the job because in terms of the white gaze, she met the qualifications for looking beautiful, but she was still a K. And the sinister part about this story is that even though she was favored in this sense, because the husband of the matron looked at her and said that she's beautiful, because he glanced at her that way and said it, she got the job, but that matron made her pay for getting that job in the way she did, because now my husband is looking at you in a favorable way. And so you understand what Black women and women of color were going through. Not only was it patriarchy, but it was a system of racism, but it was also a system of pretty privilege that was at play. So you are favored, but also you're punished at the same time because you are at the bottom of the system. It also meant that those ladies which were in the room who were more dark-skinned, even though they were qualified, they were unqualified because they were not a mooi K, which directly affected their livelihood. And that's why I think we cling on to colorism, even when we do it subconsciously, because we do. Livelihood, our comforts, our freedoms, the way we live is affected by that. That's why it is so important to unlearn, but it is also important to teach. And that is why these slurs, for me, are very important. And that is why it is even more important that we speak about apartheid, because there is a lot to unpack.